We're here, we're doing a crash course on Euro nymphing. I'm Russell Miller with Umpqua Feather Merchants. I'm happy to present to you this 3-part series. We're going to take a look at flies and the different kinds of flies we're bringing out on the water with us, specifically as it pertains to Euro nymphing. But all these bugs you're going to find cross over into all your different kinds of angling. So I'm going to go through my boxes. This is my little kind of everyday carry kit. I have 4 boxes I bring with me. 3 boxes of nymphs and a box of dry flies, and we'll kind of take a look at each one of my 4 boxes here and kind of talk about choosing flies and building a box so you can have good success when you're out on the water. One of the things that I think is really important all the time when you're putting together fly boxes for whatever kind of fishing you're going to be doing is I always like to refer to it as finding answers, right? You're going to find yourself in different scenarios and fish behaving differently as we're seeing different kinds of emergencies throughout the day, and you want to have answers. To me, that's one of the biggest things, is having answers to what you're seeing, right? And this is why I like to carry a variety of stuff. I've tried to pare down my offering to be able to have it in a smaller package, so I don't, the big bulky vest guy or the giant pack or this or that. This is kind of like my Perdigon box, a lot of really slender flies with bigger oversized beads. The idea behind this collection of flies is twofold, right? A lot of times these can be really impressionistic flies, so I've got a lot of flies that are in the Baetisii family, which we're kind of seeing happening alongside of us here. We're seeing some sporadic rises to midges and Baetis, right? And so a lot of those Perdigons can be really impressionistic, which is I really like. The other side of the Perdigon equation is it's typically a big oversized bead in a really slender body, and what that does is it just straight through a lot of that surface tension, because as we move down through the water, typically if you were to kind of cut this run in half, you'd see fast water on the top, and as you move down towards the bottom where you're rolling along the substrate, that water really slows down, right? And so those flies can fall through that fast stuff really, really effectively, right? And end up slowing and moving in that slower current down lower. So that's a lot of this box here, and I've got everything from PMDs to caddis to Baetis in here, and a couple other kind of goodies along the way there. As we kind of look at these, you're going to find, as I open up some of these other boxes too, I have a lot of the same flies in various weights, right? And I think it's really important, before we get too far into this, to note that this whole system is built around the weight being in your flies. And when we get to the rigging part, which I know you'll watch because it's super interesting, we'll talk about why that is built that way. But as far as the flies go, I like to have the same flies, some of my favorite confidence patterns, in a variety of weights, right? So as I move from the shallower waters of the tail out, or the really slow stuff where I don't want them to fall too fast, I want them to come down naturally through the water column. I can fish lighter flies, but if I know they're eating a certain kind of fly, as I get to some of this deeper, heavier stuff at the head of the run, right, I can fish that same fly with a bigger bead, so it kind of plummets down through that faster current at the top and finds that slow, deep stuff, right? And so this box here I kind of call my summer box. It has a lot of pheasant tails and hare's eyrie, and I've got some turds in here and even some drake streamers, and I really like this box, and you'll find here a lot of my favorite flies. I've got in the same size, just various beads, and I've tied a lot of these here. Some of these are Umpqua patterns, but one of the things that Umpqua's done, and I know they have them in the bins at Trouts, is in our bomb series, we've offered those in 2 different weights, right? So you can get a size 16 with a 2.5 millimeter bead, as well as a 3 millimeter bead, right? So you can do that exact same thing here. I always tell people these flies translate so well too when you're float fishing out of the boat, right? And let's say you're on the Colorado and you come to a section where you're fishing, like a big chubby style dry, and you're up against the riprap, right? You want to fish that bigger, that 3 millimeter or 2.5 millimeter bead that goes right down through that stuff, and you can fish that riprap with the dry dropper. And then as you kind of get into that slower, broader, more even water, if you were to be fishing that same 3 millimeter bead, what you're going to start to see is your dry wanting to chug down in there. And so you can tie on that same fly again if it's working, and fish that exact same fly in a lighter weight And it's the same principle that we're doing here in the Euro rig that you would do in a dry dropper out of the boat or something like that. So like I said, as you're building these boxes, this isn't just for Euro nymphing. I take these and fish them out of the boat all the time. These are just, again, my confidence patterns, what I really do like to fish. And so, again, this is kind of my summer box. I've got my Good Luck box here. My Good Luck box is a lot of kind of junk. It's junk and small flies. This is what I'll take into Cheeseman in the winter, right? Heavy flies that are gonna get down in a lot of pockets, a lot of jig streamers and stuff like that to be able to work in some of those slower, deeper pieces, and then dragging down as small of a zebra midge-esque fly as I can tie on some of this stuff. I've got some eggs in there. I've got a few worms. I've got a few mops. It's kind of that grab bag of like, well, let's just see if that's working. Because sometimes it does, and you know, you'll see here as I'm fishing, I like to change flies often, right? With the system, you're able to change your depth pretty easily, right? And so you can kind of get that depth, like, all right, I feel like I need to be a little bit lower, or I'm going to be a little higher up, especially if you're seeing fish kind of rolling around like we are a little bit today. So you're able to control your depth pretty well. So I feel like after a few drifts, if I'm not getting a response on a fly, I really do like to change it out and try something fresh and really try to find out what they like. You'll see here in a lot of these boxes too. You know, I've got a lot of like, some of these are bright tag nymphs, right? Those trigger spots that you see in a lot of stuff, like you know, bright orange, bright pink, yellow even, you know, a color that when they see it coming down the water, it's like, whoa, what is this thing? Maybe I ought to go inspect it. They put their mouth on it, and because your system is constructed the way it is, right, you can register that strike and set the hook and get that fish. So sometimes I like to put some really bright, loud colors into the water and see if that kind of gets that maybe response going from the fish. And then other times I'm going to go very subtle, so there's a lot less reason for them to say, whoa, maybe that is not food, right? We always want to say maybe that is food. And so I try to have a good balance of both in the box, where you can kind of have some of those going on the same rig. So, you know, that idea of like maybe an egg that brings them over to look at it and then they eat the small fly. That same idea, even with a smaller package, you know, like Devin Olson's Blowtorch is a really great example of that, where it's, you know, it's that bright orange tag at the back of it, or a bright pink tag off the back of like a hare's ear type body almost. And then my last box, right, is a dry fly box. In my dry fly box, I really like this, the only waterproof one in this system, right? If my nymphs get wet, no one cares if your nymphs get wet. That's what they're supposed to do. You don't want your dry flies to get soaked if you accidentally take the wrong step. And what I try to do is have like caddis attractor and terrestrial on this side, and then I've got my mayfly on this side. And it's just, yeah, my wading box. I feel like I can cover most angling situations with what's in here. Again, like whether we're fishing a specific hatch, or we're going to be out general fishing dry dropper, right, and I need some really buoyant flies, or you're throwing that terrestrial mix up in the day. But, you know, if I was getting started, I would go in and I would really try to think about flies that I'm confident in fishing and what season I like to fish. And there is a Euro version of that fly typically, and you may have a lot of these flies in your box. Like Craven's 2-bit series is a really great Euro fly, right? It's got 2 tungsten beads on there, so it penetrates through the water. They're super impressionistic, right? And again, a great crossover. So by season, I'd go in and kind of buy flies seasonally for what you know you like to be fishing anyway. And then, you know, as you construct it, right, you're going to find you need a little extra weight flies, which is some of this junk here, or, you know, stone flies make awesome kind of anchors. And this all makes sense when you watch the second part of this, or however you end up viewing it. But when you build the system, you'll understand why we have these anchor flies and these dropper flies, and how they work with one another to achieve the depth and register those strikes. And they really do work in conjunction. So, right, you've got kind of searching patterns, or sometimes like in Cheeseman in the winter, a lot of times I end up fishing like throwaway patterns. I really don't expect to get a bite on it, but it's going to sink and take down 2 really impressionistic flies that I do expect to get those bites on. And again, I think the popularity of the Perdigon is a direct result of like they get down well and they can be impressionistic, but they can also be really loud. It depends on which one, but you know, the bins at Trouts are loaded with awesome flies. I know they've got this kind of stuff roped off, but it really does translate through a lot of the different flies. But building a base of some heavy flies that allow you to get down and feel where you are within your drift, and then mixing in some of those lighter flies that you may already have in your box is a great way to kind of start approaching building out some boxes to take out in the water with you. Hope this was a little informative for you, and kind of paints a picture of how I like to set up my boxes, and maybe suggest a little bit for you to try some new flies as well.